Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Here's a tale of one man's unexpected upgrade from a simple $6K server order to a $500,000 server room in his basement, thanks to a snarky manager and a billing mix-up that led to a deal of a lifetime. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. This is not a mistake. Last year, I was ordering an upgrade for the server room at work. It was a large, expensive upgrade that cost over $500,000. If you've ever had to call a manufacturer to order equipment at this amount, you may know that once you get a good reputation with the manufacturer, they tend to cut red tape for you to maintain a good working relationship with your company. In the past, I've bought equipment for my personal use at home, and it takes forever to get a rep on the phone, and they often screw you on the deal. While I was making the order with the manufacturer, I inquired about getting personal equipment to see if it would be possible to make a separate order for myself with my own money. The rep had no issues with it and was happy to make the second order. He placed both orders and even gave me a company discount for my order. Now, I did make it perfectly clear that the second order was a personal order and not in any way connected to the corporate account or order. He confirmed this and the order was locked. A few months went by and the equipment showed up in the loading dock at work and everything was in order. However, my order never arrived at my house. I attempted to contact the manufacturer but got put on hold for hours. I gave up for now and figured I'd try again in a few days. The next morning, the equipment showed up. It was an exact match for the equipment that was sent to my work. Now keep in mind, the order I placed for my house was a blade server that was just over $6K. This was not what I ordered. I went into panic mode as I can't afford this equipment, and when they bill me, I'll be screwed. I checked my bank account and found no charges yet. Now I'm really panicked as now I think they billed it to my company, effectively double charging them. I expect I'll get fired. When I returned to work after my weekend, I emailed billing and got a copy of the invoice. Well, they didn't bill my company for the equipment sent to my house. Now I'm really confused. So at this point, I drop it. It's a pain to get them on the phone, and I can't call the corporate line when it's a personal order. A month later, I got an invoice in the mail with a late charge for failure to pay. Okay, now I can get this fixed. I see they want $6K plus $250 for late charges. That's odd. I called the retention number and got a rep. I gave her the account number and she told me she needed to transfer me to a manager due to the amount. Okay, cool. The manager picks up the phone and I try to explain the bill is wrong and the equipment they sent isn't what I ordered, and he immediately cut me off with, "You need to pay the invoice. You're in violation of the contract and we'll sue you if you don't pay it immediately." I tried again to explain the equipment issue, but again he cut me off and demanded I pay. So I told him I'd take care of it then. I said sorry for being an inconvenience and I'll call my bank right away. I then confirmed the bill amount and the part order number from my equipment labels. He confirmed it and said, "See, there was no mistake." And as I was about to hang up, I know I heard him say in a smug tone to someone else, "That's how you deal with poor D-heads." Called my bank and got them to unblock the transaction. It was stopped for fraud alert. The amount was paid. I'm now the owner of a $500,000 server room in my basement. A few months later, I had to order some more connectors for the fiber lines and spoke to their rep again. I inquired about buying personal devices again since the last time went so well. Apparently, they can't do that anymore. Something about a manager fraud investigation? Can't imagine what that's about. Later, something big breaks at work. Oh, look at that. I happen to have an exact spare for that part on my home network. I'll bring it in immediately and get it installed since our vendor's a bit slow. You can reimburse me later. And our second story. Entitled neighbor wants me to remove trees so he can have better view. I live in Florida on an island surrounded by nature. My home's on brackish to salt water with a dock nestled among a dense array of nearly 100 palm trees, large oak trees draped in Spanish moss, and native longleaf pines, some of which are over a century old. From my backyard, it feels like I'm the only person on the water. The seclusion is perfect, and the wildlife is abundant, with everything from endangered birds to otters making their home in my yard. When I first bought the home, my neighbor seemed friendly enough, but that changed quickly. Within a few months, he started pestering me about when I was going to remove all the trees and vegetation so he could have a better view of the water from his home. The elevation of the island means that my house is about 40 feet above the dock, so if I cleared the yard, he'd be able to see for miles, and anyone else could see straight into my home. I tried to be polite and explained that I enjoyed the seclusion the trees provided and had no plans to remove any of them. I told him that these trees had been here for over a century, and if they were cut down, it'd take another 100 years or more for anything like them to grow back. I also mentioned the endangered animals, reptiles, and birds that lived in my yard and how removing the trees would destroy their habitat. I even have photos and videos of osprey, red-cocketed woodpeckers, otters, and all kinds of other wildlife living in my yard. But my neighbor wasn't having it. He was furious that the trees were blocking his view of the water. I calmly pointed out that the view had been blocked for over 100 years, and if he wanted to change that, he should have bought the property when it was for sale. He stormed off in a huff, but I didn't care. He was rude, and I wasn't about to let him dictate what I did with my land. Over the years, the tension between us continued. I prefer a wild, natural yard, while he likes everything neat and trimmed with no trees, just grass. My yard's a haven for wildlife and native plants, each with a purpose, from providing food to shelter for various species. But to him, it was just an eyesore. A month ago, after 15 years of living here, he brought up the issue again. He said he thought I was finally going to remove some trees to clear a view to the river. I'd removed a few non-native ornamental trees over the years, but only to replace them with native nut trees or berry bushes. I explained this to him, but he wasn't satisfied. He ranted about how a man's home is his castle and that I should have bought a home in the forest if I wanted to live in one. I was floored. This is my home, my castle. I told him again that nothing had changed in my yard for over 100 years and that, in fact, I did buy a home in a forest. This one. I also reminded him once more that if he wanted the property to his liking, he should have bought it when he had the chance. After that, I posted no trespassing signs all around my property and put up cameras to monitor any activity. I thought that would be enough to keep him at bay, but I was wrong. Just a few weeks ago, I came home to find that several of my trees had been cut down. I immediately checked the camera footage and saw my neighbor trespassing on my property, chopping down the trees himself. I was livid. These weren't just any trees, they were native longleaf pines, some of which were over 100 years old. I called the police right away and showed them the footage. They confirmed it was clear evidence of trespassing and destruction of property. The neighbor was fined and given a stern warning, but I wasn't satisfied. I've since filed a lawsuit against him for the cost of the trees and the damage he's done to my property. My lawyer says I have a strong case, and I'm prepared to see it through to the end. Since then, my neighbor's been noticeably absent. He no longer bothers me, and I've reinforced my property line with even more cameras and signage. I'm not taking any chances. My yard may be wild and untamed, but it's mine, and I'm going to protect it no matter what. Love how he said you should have bought a property in a forest. He should have bought a property with better views. And our next story. Strangers refuse to leave my private property. So I live in an area that's seeing a lot of new builds. My husband and I have the last large lot on our street, lived here for 20 plus years. Probably 800 people lived here when we bought our house. Now it's 10,000 plus. It's about an acre and a half. We installed a big play area a few years ago for nieces, nephews, eventual grandkids. It's on the opposite side of our lot, pretty far from the house. There's a path that goes from our second driveway. It's landscaped, and we purchased it from a contractor who was replacing some other park. So I can see how people mistake it as a town park. This happens often that people stop to play, and I usually don't care, but we don't encourage it as we have two giant dogs who will bark at strangers who come into the yard. I put up some blatant signs that say private property and beware of dog. Right now it's still cold here. It's an early Friday morning, and I open the door to let the dogs out. They stay in the yard and ignore anything outside the yard. The dogs start barking, I hear yelling, I run outside. There's a couple and their kid playing on the playground. I call the dogs back and put them in the house. I go over to apologize and let them know it's not a public park. As soon as I get within earshot, the mom starts yelling, "What the F is wrong with you? We're calling animal control on your butt. Who lets their dogs just run around a effing park? Get a fence." I hate confrontation, so I get a little shaky. I tell her it's not a park, it's my yard. She says, "Get the F out of here! Get away from us!" I point to the signs and tell her that it's not a park, it's our yard, and they need to leave. She starts going on about how it's illegal to leave a play area open. It isn't. And it's illegal to let your dogs off leash in this neighborhood. It isn't. There are almost no bylaws here yet. I tell them again to just leave, and they weren't allowed to be on the property. My dogs are in the big window barking, and her husband's screaming that I should train my effing dogs before they kill someone. They're bred to guard and detain intruders. Historically, we don't train them as guard dogs. This pissed me off more than anything because I'm an irrational animal lover. I called the police. When they saw I was on the phone with the cops, they started shouting about me being a Karen and started getting in their car. Their poor kid was crying, and the woman said, "Watch what happens when you end up on Reddit, and we tell people where you effing live." And our last story. There will be no dirt on your tires. So I've worked at an outdoor retail store for a little over 2 years now. The employee turnover rate at my job is pretty high, with most only lasting a few months. Thus, I've become one of the more knowledgeable employees, and I work primarily in the bike shop. Now, the bike shop manager also happens to be head bike tech, meaning he's often busy repairing and building bikes. He's taken a liking to me, and as such, I do most of the part ordering, repair check-ins, and restocking and merchandising of the department floor. One of the few employees who's been working longer than me bought himself a brand new fat bike last spring. He lives in a small apartment, so he stores his bike at the shop, as the bike shop manager and store owner allow. However, it's meant to be stored in the warehouse, not on the shop floor itself. Well, one day we got a large order of bikes that we wanted to put on the floor. I went and asked this employee if he could move his bike to the warehouse or if I could for him. He told me, "Yes, you can bring it to the warehouse, but I don't want dirt on the tires. It needs to stay shiny and clean for the winter. Also, please put it in a corner or something where it won't get dinged or scratched." Well, I'm a kind and accommodating coworker. However, I don't fancy having to carry this large bike the 500 feet or so to the warehouse, so I decided that I'd make sure that no one would scratch his bike. In our warehouse, half of it is dedicated to backstock, and the other half has our paddle sports department. In the backstock side, half of that is large shelves like you'd see at Costco or other large grocery stores, and the other is bike racks for our stock that won't fit on the floor. The top of these shelves are usually left empty as we don't have a forklift, and there usually isn't enough merchandise to facilitate needing that extra space. This open space 20 feet off the ground is where my malicious compliance took place. Carefully, I climbed the ladder to the top of the shelf, carrying his bike on my back. Once up there, I carefully tied it to the post that was left up there and stood it up on some cardboard boxes so as to not dirty the tires. I then climbed down and moved the ladder. I then continued about my work and finished the merchandising. My bike shop manager has a great sense of humor, so when he went to the warehouse to grab a bike in for repairs, he about lost it when he saw what I had done with the bike. He came back into the store laughing his head off and agreed that was a justly earned prank. My coworker who owned the bike, on the other hand, did not find it quite as funny. He's shorter than me, and so he couldn't reach high enough when on top of the ladder to get it down. When I left in the fall for school, it was still up there, and I imagine he'll have to get another coworker to get it down for him. Legend has it, his bike is still up there. Question: if he doesn't like dirt on the tires, how does he manage to ride around? It's like buying diving equipment, but you don't want it to get wet. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.